Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Sen. In 2006, the Australian Coast Watch found a ship floating out at sea that was completely empty with a broken tow rope. Finding a ship floating with no one aboard is always a strange kind of mystery, but things only got more mysterious from there on out. Investigators had absolutely nothing to go off of that could give them any kind of clues. The name of the ship was printed on the side, but that's it. There was nothing else to identify the ship, there were no documents or belongings, no reports of missing boats, no records of distress signals, like literally nothing. They can't even figure out who it belonged to or where it came from. Their best guess is that the ship was possibly used to supply food and fuel to fishing boats, but that does not explain why no one tried to save it or even look for it. Was there someone on it when it got lost? Who knows? In our number 9 spot today, we have Harold Holt. Harold was the 17th Prime Minister of Australia until his presumed death in 1967. In December of that year, Harold was with 4 other people when he convinced everyone to stop at Cheviot Beach for a swim. The weather conditions were pretty rough, so only one other person actually went into the water with him. Holt said he knew the beach like the back of his hand, but sadly he was taken by the sea when going for a swim. Despite the subsequent investigation that ensued, which involved the biggest search operation in Australian history, no body has ever been found. The disappearance has been the source of mystery since the day it happened, with many conspiracy theories being created around it. Some believed he faked his own death, while others believe he was killed by the CIA, and of course there are people who believe that it was simply just a case of getting caught in a riptide. Whatever truly happened here may be a mystery, but it is also an extreme tragedy. In our number 8 spot today, we have Jelly Rain. Back in 1994, residents of Oakville, which is a small city in Washington, reported a series of mysterious translucent gelatinous blobs covering the ground. From the first report, over the next 3 weeks, more discoveries of this strange substance began to roll in, with many people claiming that they had fallen ill as a result of coming into contact with it. Many people believed that this substance had actually come down from the skies like rain, as each of the blobs was about the size of a grain of rice, and they were strewn about the ground just as rain would be. There are of course tons of theories as to what this substance could be, and that includes the fallout from some sort of military weapons test, but to this day nothing has ever been confirmed, and it remains just as much of a mystery as it was 27 years ago. In our number 7 spot today, we have Derek Amato. One day in 2006, Derek Amato was having a fun day at the pool with friends before a life-changing moment occurred. Derek yelled for his buddy to pass him the football as he dove into the pool, but just one moment later, Derek had found his head hitting the concrete floor of the pool so hard that he gave himself an extremely severe concussion. The injury caused him to lose 35% of his hearing in one ear and left him with headaches and memory loss, but also a newfound ability. Just 4 days after the accident, Derek found himself somewhere he had never seen himself, in front of a piano. Despite never having played before, Derek found his hands gliding across the keyboard like he was a seasoned professional. He said, quote, "As I shut my eyes, I found these black and white structures moving from left to right, which in fact would represent in my mind a fluid and continuous stream of musical notation." While Derek has had to suffer through a multitude of side effects from his injury, he continues to say that he believes he was given a gift. This is truly an interesting story, but no one can quite figure out exactly how this happened. Derek isn't the only person with a story like this, and all are as equally amazing as they are perplexing. In our number 6 spot today, we have the WOW signal. In August of 1977, there was a radio telescope at Ohio State University that detected a strange signal. The radio picked up a pulse of radiation that was super unusual and that was coming from somewhere by the constellation of Sagittarius. The signal lasted for 37 seconds, and it has been commonly referred to as the WOW signal because of the fact that the astronomers observing it were so shocked at the time that they wrote "wow" on the printout from the telescope. This signal was so shocking because it was in a band of radio frequencies that are internationally banned on Earth. There are a multitude of natural sources for radiation in space that would cover a multitude of frequencies, so there are scientists who are skeptical that this could be proof of alien life, but skepticism doesn't mean it should be ruled out. Maybe this signal came from a huge astronomical event, or perhaps intelligent alien life with a very powerful transmitter who are trying to contact us. At the end of the day, this signal was detected in 1977, and we still don't know exactly where it's coming from or why it exists, so who's to say for sure? In our number 5 spot today, we have the Mothman. Back on a dark November night in 1966, 4 young people, 2 couples, claimed that they saw a tall bird-like monster that had glowing red eyes. They claimed they saw it while they were cruising down a back road near Point Pleasant, which sits in rural West Virginia. They explained that whatever this creature was, it rose into the air, unfolded these huge bat-like wings, and chased them as they sped away as fast as they could, totally frightened by what they had just seen. From here, stories of the Mothman continued to spread, with more sightings coming in the following weeks. This story, of course, is what inspired the 2002 movie The Mothman Prophecies, which was based off of John Keel's book that told the stories of these uncanny sightings and experiences in relation to this mysterious creature or being. This is because he believes that this creature was somehow mysteriously linked to the collapse of the Silver Bridge in Point Pleasant in December of 1967. This bridge collapse took the lives of 46 people, and that included some of those who had said that they had an experience with the Mothman. Some people believe the story, others think it's just folklore and gullible people, so here I am asking, what do you think? In our number 4 spot today, we have the Mary Celeste. Okay, I'll admit, this one's out of our lifetime, but I mean, the Mary Celeste, it's a classic mystery. The Mary Celeste first set sail on November 7th, 1872 with a cargo full of alcohol. What happened over the next month isn't quite clear, but what we do know is that on the afternoon of December 5th of the same year, another ship on the Atlantic crossing found her drifting somewhere between Azores and Portugal. The captain of this ship knew the captain of the Mary Celeste and knew that he was a skilled and capable sailor, so he was extremely suspicious. He ordered a crew to board the Mary Celeste, and when they did, they found that the ship had been deserted, but it was in full seaworthy condition, so why had they abandoned it? Especially the captain. The captain of the ship that found this derelict split his crew and sailed the Mary Celeste to Gibraltar for more investigations, but despite this, the captain, his family, and the crew of 7 that were on board the Mary Celeste simply just disappeared, and no one knows what happened or where they could have gone. I think this one is so famous because it has no answers tied to it at all. Like, it really is just one of those mysteries with next to nothing to go off of in terms of clues. In our number 3 spot today, we have alien visitation. Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker are 2 men who are from Mississippi, and back in 1973, while fishing, the pair swear that they were abducted by aliens. They say that they heard strange sounds and saw weird lights above their heads. When they looked up, they saw an oval-shaped object that they say was about 40 feet across and 10 feet high. The pair explained that during this abduction they were fully conscious, but they were unable to move. It isn't exactly clear what they entailed, but the men say that the extraterrestrials conducted experiments on them before releasing them. Of course, many people said that the men were lying, but both of them passed a polygraph test. Polygraphs aren't the most accurate tool in the world, but the chance of both of them passing is a lot slimmer than if it was just one person. This has led some people to suggest that perhaps they experienced some sort of combined dream, but even if that is the case, how that could have happened is still very much a mystery. Who knows if they actually experienced something or not, and if they did, what exactly it was.
Coming in at number 10 is the knock in space. In 2003, Yang Liwei made history as China's first man in space. While there though, he experienced something terrifying. He heard a knock. Now back on Earth, Yang described the event to reporters. The sound reminded him of someone knocking the body of the spaceship, just as knocking an iron bucket with a wooden hammer. He could not place the source of the sound. He said it neither came from the outside nor inside of the spaceship. He set out to explore the shuttle for any hints. Staring out his porthole, he saw nothing noticeable on the side. There was nothing faulty inside either. No one could explain the eerie knock. Now, scientists have had little success uncovering the sound's mysterious origins when it came back. Returning to Earth, Yang inspected the capsule again, and he and his coworkers were still confused. The crew attempted to recreate the sound, but nothing came close. Because sound needs a medium, the most likely reason was an object physically hitting the spacecraft, but no marks indicated outside contact. The most accepted theory is the metallic surface of the exterior contracted while exposed to the cold vacuum of space. Now, other astronauts have reported similar sounds in 2005 and 2008, leading to suspicions that it has to do with the temperature, but they don't know for sure what it was. Number 9. SL-1. SL-1 was a prototype nuclear reactor built in the 1950s in the Idaho desert. The facility was constructed by the the army as part of an experiment to create a portable reactor that could be used to power remote installations. As these facilities would be staffed by military personnel and not atomic scientists, SL-1 was designed to be easier to operate than a standard nuclear reactor. If the reactor crew wanted/needed to control the reactor, all they had to do was raise lower a series of 5 control rods. On January 3rd, 1961, a 3-man night crew, CE-1 Richard Legg and Army specialists John Brines and Richard McKinley had to restart the reactor after it had been shut down for 2 weeks prior for the holidays. Now, this task involved raising the central rod only 4 inches. For some reason though, Brines lifted the rod 26 inches, and that's all it took to send the reactor supercritical. Its fuel melted and explosively vaporized, launching the reactor 9 feet into the air and spreading radioactive debris all over the room. This chain reaction took 4 seconds and ended the lives of Brines and Legg immediately. Emergency personnel rescued a heavily irradiated McKinley from the reactor room, but he passed away from his injuries while en route to a medical facility. Now, in order to prevent him from contaminating anyone, the ambulance containing his body, which was wrapped in lead blankets, was dumped in the middle of the desert until it could be dealt with properly. While McKinley and Brines were accounted for, no one could locate Legg. After they returned to the site for a brief search, his body was found pinned to the ceiling by a large plug that entered through his groin and out through his shoulder. It took 6 days to recover him via a careful operation that involved guys with long poles knocking him off the ceiling onto a structure below. Number 8. Melted corpses. On December 5th, 1876, the Brooklyn Theater's performance of The Two Orphans had 900 guests in the audience. At roughly 11:20 p.m., a small fire broke out in a backstage area, and in an attempt to calm everyone down, the actors broke character and began reassuring people there was nothing to worry about and that the flames were all a part of the show. But when a piece of flaming debris fell and nearly hit an actor, it caused them to freak out and run. Panic erupted and everyone sprinted for the doors. But while the audience on the ground floor could escape easily enough, the stairway leading to the balconies quickly became blocked and then became crush zones where dozens were trampled to death. The fire department initially figured that the majority of the crowd had escaped because someone entered the flaming building and quickly surveyed the balconies but didn't see anyone. In the light of the morning though, firemen found charred bodies inside the lobby, the stairwells, the backstage area, and the auditorium, some of which had been subjected to such insane temperatures that they fused with other corpses, creating a giant nightmare flesh rat king. Ugh. Now, the fire ended the lives of so many people that local morgues were swiftly overwhelmed, and the only way to bury them in a timely fashion was a mass grave in a nearby cemetery. Number 7. The New London School Explosion. On the afternoon of March 18th, 1937, the shop teacher at a school in New London, Texas, turned on an electric sander. Unknown to him, there was a massive natural gas leak under the school. The sander sparked, which ignited the gas and caused a massive explosion that ended the lives of almost 300 students and teachers. It was absolutely horrific. Now, the force of the explosion was so great that a 2-ton block of concrete crushed a car parked 200 feet away. Now, this event is actually why natural gas has a smell now. To reduce the damage of future leaks, the Texas state legislature granted the Texas Railroad Commission regulatory authority to adopt and enforce regulations for the odorization of natural gas in order to prevent such accidents. Within weeks of the explosion, thiol, mercaptan, and odorous sulfur compound was added to natural gas. Now, today, the strong odor makes leaks quickly detectable. Number 6. Chicken Poop Prison. Yep, you heard that name right. Chicken Poop Prison. What was this, you may ask? Well, it was a former prison in Lam Sing, Thailand. It was built by the French in 1893 when the French occupied the areas as part of the Franco-Siamese War to imprison Thai resistance fighters. The square-shaped tower is made from red bricks and is 4.4 meters wide and 7 meters tall, with 2 rows of slits along the sides. The tower was abandoned after the French withdrew in 1904, and the resistance prisoners were kept on the ground floor of the tower. Above them was a chicken coop. The floor between them was perforated, meaning chicken feces were able to fall down on the prisoners below as a form of torment. Now, the long-standing impacts of this much-feared torment are still felt in the region today, as there's a Thai saying for those who buck authority that roughly translates to, "Be careful not to get caught in a chicken poop prison." Yeah, that sounds Horrible. Number 5. Town of St. Pierre. In the late 1890s and early 1900s, St. Pierre, Martinique was known as a beautiful town, but there was darkness looming over it, a volcano. Citizens of the area were so used to the volcanic activity that no one took it seriously when the fresh steaming vent holes and earth tremors started during April 1902. Then minor explosions began at the summit of the volcano, ash began to rain down continuously, and the nauseating stench of sulfur filled the air, but for some reason they stayed in the town. Even worse, more than 100 snakes slithered down and invaded the town. They ended the lives of 50 people, and people still stayed living there. There are reports of horses, pigs, and dogs screaming as red ants and foot-long centipedes crawled up their legs and bit them. Then on May 5th, a landslide of boiling mud and water from the Tikovsky Crater leaked and spilled into the River Blanche, and 23 workmen died. This was followed by a tsunami that ended the lives of hundreds of people, and this naturally caused concern in the town, and many wanted to leave. So yeah, people just stayed there and went on with their lives while this was all happening. Even after the whole snake situation though, couldn't be me. Then 3 days later, on May 8th, Mount Pelee finally exploded, sending an avalanche of white-hot lava straight towards the town. Within 3 minutes, St. Pierre was completely obliterated, and of its 30,000 population, there were only 2 people who survived. Number 4. The Dancing Plague. The Dancing Plague was a case of dancing mania that occurred in modern-day France and the Holy Roman Empire from July 1518 to September 1518. Somewhere between 50 and 400 people took to dancing for weeks. The outbreak began in July 1518 when a woman by the name of Fru Tofia began to dance in a street in Strasbourg. She kept up this constant dancing for a week straight. Soon 36 others joined in on the dancing chaos, and in August of the same year, the Dancing Plague had claimed 400 victims. Dancers were beginning to collapse, and it said they died due to stroke or heart attack. No one knew what was causing this reaction, which meant no one understood how to remedy the situation either. By early September, the outbreak began to subside as the dancers were sent to a mountain shrine to pray for absolution. Now, there are many theories behind the phenomenon, the most popular being stress-induced mass hysteria, suggested by John Waller. Other theories include ergo and religious explanations. Number 3. The Halifax Explosion. Regarded by many as the biggest man-made explosion prior to the invention of the atomic bomb, a ship filled with explosives collided with another vessel in Halifax Harbor. The resulting explosion flattened much of the city's downtown core, ending the lives of roughly 2,000 and injuring 9,000. Now, the blast is said to have temporarily displaced water in the harbor, forming a tsunami that reached up to 15 meters high, surging over the wreckage of the waterfront. Now, the following day, Halifax was hit by a blizzard that dumped 40 centimeters of snow on top of the city, further complicating rescue efforts. Now, the city is also home to a cemetery where many victims of the Titanic were laid to rest, and it's said that the body identification system developed at the time of the Titanic sinking in 1912 aided efforts to identify victims of the Halifax explosion in 1917. Number 2. James Jameson Crime. You know Jameson whiskey? Well, on an expedition into Africa during the late 19th century, James Jameson, the heir to Jameson Irish Whiskey Empire, reportedly asked to witness humans eating other humans in action. In order to make his horrifying desire a reality, he purchased a slave girl and handed her over to men who ended her life and feasted on her flesh. Jameson is said to have sketched out the gruesome scene, later turning his rough illustrations into a series of watercolors. Of course, for years the family tried to bury the fact and the stories and discredit the witnesses. But his only rebuttal in the case, which reflected badly on him, was that he wanted to see if they would do it. Yeah, so think of that next time you have a drink. And coming at number 1 is the Viplum experiments. The National Dental Service of Sweden was established in 1938. The state of dental health was not well studied at the time, and cavities were widespread. It was suspected high-sugar diets caused tooth decay, but there was no scientific proof. In 1945, the medical board commissioned a study on the subject, which would then become the Viplum experiments. The Viplum experiments were a series of human experiments where patients at Viplum Hospital for the Intellectually Disabled in Lund, Sweden, were fed large amounts of sweets, including including extra sticky toffee to provoke dental caries. The experiments were sponsored by both the sugar industry and the dentist community in an effort to determine whether carbohydrates affected the formation of cavities. The experiments provided extensive knowledge about dental health and resulted in enough data to link the intake of sugar to dental caries. However, today they are considered to have violated multiple principles of medical ethics, and yeah, that is just horrible.
Starting us off at our number 10 spot, we have snake oil. Ew. Nowadays, the name snake oil salesman refers to someone who is knowingly selling fraudulent goods, but this title actually gets its roots from an actual occupation from back in the 1800s. Oil was extracted from Chinese water snakes, and due to this oil being rich in omega-3s, it was used to reduce inflammation, treat arthritis, and even bursitis. These oils were rubbed on workers' joints after a long and hard day of work, mostly workers who were working on the Transcontinental Railroad. But then came Clark Stanley, the rattlesnake king. Stanley claimed he studied with a hoppy medicine man who convinced Stanley of the incredible snake oil healing powers. He then took this newfound knowledge on the road and performed at Chicago's World Fair in 1893. His act consisted of him taking a rattlesnake out of a bag, cutting it open, and extracting the liquid and claiming it to be the medicinal snake oil. But the FDA later confirmed that there was no trace of real snake oil in his liquid at all. But that didn't stop dishonest doctors and other fraudulent salesmen from attempting to sell the fake snake oil. This then gave this somewhat true and beneficial medical practice a bad name. Folks, if any of you need any supplements for joints or otherwise, use any of the trusted omega-3 oils being sold around the world today. There's also tons of natural foods that will give you a great dose of that stuff too, so no need to go snake hunting. Coming in at our number 9 spot, we have doctors using blow. That's right, we all know the drug that is often referred to as blow. Well, back in the day, doctors actually prescribed it to patients who were experiencing toothaches, depression, sinusitis, lethargy, alcoholism, and even impotence. In the mid-1880s, scientists were able to isolate the active ingredient in the coca leaf, known as erythrocylin coca. Guess what? Pharmaceutical companies loved it. So what happened? Well, it was soon being sold as a lozenge, a tonic, a powder, and even in cigarettes. It even appeared in Sears catalogs. Yeah, remember those things? I mean, I remember the Christmas ones because I would always pick my yearly new toy out of that magazine, but luckily I never even picked or even came across blow being sold, so I think my parents were thankful for that. But anyway, they were advertised in little boxes with tablets inside, and buyers could purchase them for about 50 cents a box. You didn't even need a prescription from a doctor for it. Fortunately, and I guess unfortunately for others, in 1914, the Harrison Narcotic Act outlawed the production, importation, and distribution of the substance. Other fun fact that many of you might already know, but the same substance was also found in the famous Coca-Cola drink. Another reason for why the soft drink was named Coca-Cola. Coming in at number 8 and staying on the illegal substance train, we have dope. How did people in the past help cure one drug epidemic? Well, they made a new one. This is what happened in the late 1880s when the popular drug we all call dope was used as a substitute instead of morphine. It was known as diamorphine, and the English chemical researcher named C.R. Adler Wright created it in the late 1870s. But it wasn't until a chemist working for the Bayer Company, which is still around to this day, discovered Wright's paper in 1895 and that the drug actually came to market. Bayer claimed it to be 5 times more effective and less addictive than morphine. So Bayer began marketing dope-laced aspirin in 1898 that was suggested for people suffering from sore throats, coughs, and colds. Bayer continued to rep and also highly tout the product until they noticed users coming back for bottles more and more. Finally, in 1913, Bayer finally stopped production of the drug after it was banned by the FDA altogether. Yeah, I think that was a good call, but I couldn't imagine what the withdrawal problem many people probably went through. I can't imagine what it was like. I mean, I know that is one hard drug that is insanely tough to quit, and going cold turkey on anything is so freaking difficult, let alone going cold turkey from a hard drug. That being said, I'm glad we don't actively prescribe it anymore. That I know of. Coming in at our number 7 spot, we have Mercury Treatment. Today, mercury is popularly known as a potentially poisonous metal that causes extremely harmful effects if exposed in large amounts for a prolonged amount of time. However, this wasn't always the belief. Once upon a time, let's say as far back as the early 20th century, mercury was actually used as a diuretic, disinfectant, and even a laxative. I think we should just stick to our prune juice here, but anyway. It was even used as a treatment for syphilis in some cases. But what's really scary is that doctors back then often mistook mercury poisoning symptoms for syphilis symptoms themselves. So what would they do? They would give them more mercury while they were already mercury poisoned. Freaking yikes, guys. It was even used as a dewormer in some cases in people of all ages, young and old. However, merbromin, which is a mercury containing topical antiseptic, is still used to this day to treat minor cuts and scratches and is used widely among many countries. That being said, it is banned in the US for probably obvious reasons. Coming in at number 6 is one that, if you ask me, is quite misogynistic and sexist, but anyway, here we go. We have a female pelvic massage. The modern day vibrator actually stems from a medical tool doctors used in the 19th century. Yay! Go doctors! Or maybe not. While I know many people around the world happily use vibrators today, back in the 19th century, they were used to cure a disease known as hysteria in women, also just known as normal human emotions. Hysteria was known to cause depression, anxiety, irritability, sexual desire, insomnia, faintness, and even a bloated stomach. So what would these male 19th century doctors do? Well, they would perform a pelvic massage with one of these vibrators and would perform these over a series of treatments. Magically, the woman would feel better, but it was probably just because she had an orgasm. Anyway, eventually there was a device nicknamed the manipulator, made by Dr. Joseph Mortimer Granville, that was able to be brought home and used by the woman at home in the privacy of her own home, and she could use it herself, and she could do it whenever she pleased. So while orgasms are known to boost moods, let it be known that hysteria was just a woman who was emotional and not a real disease. I think men and women were just so sexually repressed back then that some doctors thought it might be a good idea and women believed it. Anyway, nowadays if you want to go ahead and use a manipulator by yourself, no matter what your sex, you do not need to do it in front of a doctor, and thank God for that. Coming in at our halfway point at number 5, we have bloodletting. For almost 2,000 years, losing blood was seen as a good, healthy, and normal thing for people to have done to their bodies. It was also one of the most popular procedures done by surgeons. It was based on a flawed scientific theory that stated humans possessed 4 humors, aka liquids. Those liquids being blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. In order to cure disease or restore balance to these liquids, doctors would suggest bloodletting by letting a patient bleed out a little bit and evenly let these fluids restore to equal levels. Sometimes they would even use leeches to suck out the blood from patients, which gives me just as many heebie-jeebies as giving blood already does to me. But this was used up until the 19th century, and it is also important to know that in 1838, Henry Clutterbuck, a lecturer at the Royal College of Physicians, stated that bloodletting is a remedy which, when judiciously employed, it is hardly possible to estimate too highly. Freaking yikes. Once again, time and time again, I am so incredibly thankful that I live in the time period that I do live in, and this is one of those moments. Coming in at our number 4 spot, we have lithotomies. What is a lithotomy? Well, it was a procedure that was once used in order to remove bladder stones. Ouch. But just wait, as if that didn't sound painful enough already, it was done by a patient lying on their back while a blade was passed into the bladder through the perineum, the soft bit of flesh that is between the sex organ and anus, and doctors would then use hands and sometimes other instruments to then remove the stones from the bladder, and it probably goes without saying here, but the procedure was quite painful. What is even more crazy is that it had a mortality rate of 50%. The number of these procedures began to decrease in the 19th century, and it was replaced with much more humane ways of extraction. Along with that, in the 20th century, healthier diets also made less and less cases of bladder stones, and such procedures were no longer as common as they once were. Yeah, thank God. This one is one that I would have just chosen to curl up and die, because I am such a big wimp when it comes to anything medical that I know I wouldn't be able to take it, which is why these next 3 become my worst nightmare. Starting us off in our top 3 at number 3 and rhyming with our number 4 spot, you guessed it, we have lobotomies. This is technically the number 1 spot for me because it sounds the worst in my opinion, but it rhymes, so I put it at number 3. But our number 1 is no picnic either, just so you know. Anyway, if you don't know what a lobotomy is, this is a procedure where doctors would sever connections in the brain's prefrontal lobe by inserting an ice pick into the patient's head. It was usually inserted close to the eye, and many patients were not even put to sleep for the procedure. I can't even talk about it. This one makes me so sick beyond belief. But anyway, a Portuguese neurologist invented the procedure back in 1935, and a year later, the procedure was used in the US thanks to Walter Freeman. Thanks, Walter. He would go around in his automobile and would perform these procedures around the country in quite horrific ways, and quite often was not precise in his execution either. Thankfully, this procedure was put to rest after advances in psychedelic drugs were made, and Freeman performed his last lobotomy in 1967. Nope, and no. Coming in at our number 2 spot, we have shocking arousals. During the 19th century, impotence in a man was believed to have stemmed from too much sex or masturbation, or even just the opposite, too little of it. So what was the cure for impotence? Well, electric shocks, of course. Surgeon Samuel W. Gross stated in his book that masturbation, gonorrhea, sexual excesses, and constant excitement of the genital organs without gratification would lead to impotence. So doctors would then shock them back to arousal. Some doctors would even put patients in bathtubs filled with electrodes, which apparently restored sexual desire in just as little as 6 sessions. Oh, only that many? That's not so bad, I guess. guess. Not. By the late 1800s, there were even electropathic belts or electric belts that were used to help men from kidney pains, sciatic nerve issues, backaches, headaches, nervous exhaustion, and even impotence. While we know today that impotence is sparked by mental and physical illnesses, in some places it is still believed that low energy wave shock therapy can improve ED. I think that would have to be a last resort because that still sounds terrifying to me. And finally, coming in at our number 1 spot is one almost as bad as a lobotomy. We have trepanation. Well, what is this? Well, this was a procedure that was done for centuries and is actually the oldest form of surgery that we know of. The procedure consisted of a human taking on the doctor role and scraping a hole in the skull of the human in the patient role. No one is quite 100% sure what the purpose of this procedure was, but most people believe it was for letting out demons that were believed to be inhabiting the patient's body. Quite surprisingly, many humans survived and healed from this barbaric procedure. Now, were they cured of their demons though? No one quite knows. While doctors no longer do this to cure demons, there are cases of a similar procedure being done to help relieve pressure and excess blood from the brain. There was a case in Australia where it was used, and if not for the ancient procedure, the patient would have passed away due to a blood clot on the brain.
In our number 2 spot today, we have Oumuamua. So a few years ago, scientists all agreed that we had found an object that was flying through our solar system, and it was widely agreed that it was an interstellar comet that had swung out from around another star. But upon closer examination, they realized that something was propelling it and causing it to accelerate, and this is when the debate really started because they just don't know why. A.V. Loeb, who's a Harvard University astrophysicist, proposed the idea that rather than a comet, this could be an alien probe that was being pushed by a light sail, which is a very wide but extremely thin piece of material that accelerates by being pushed by solar radiation. Other scientists didn't agree with this and instead said that it's possible that hydrogen ice could have melted off of the object in a way that would mimic a rocket engine or something of that nature. But in August of last year, Avi wrote in a study that hydrogen ice is too easily heated and it would have melted off long before it reached our solar system. I guess we just have to wait it out while the scientists debate and gather more evidence to really know what's going on with this one. In our number 1 spot today, we have the MV Joyita. Around 5 a.m. on October 3rd, 1955, the MV Joyita set sail in the South Pacific. The voyage was meant to take between 41 to 48 hours, but by October 6th, the ship hadn't turned up at its destination. No ship or land-based operator reported receiving any kind of distress call from the crew, so a search and rescue mission was immediately launched. From October 6th to October 12th, the search covered roughly 100,000 square miles, but alas, no one nor the ship were found. 5 weeks later, on November 10th, a captain of another ship spotted the Joyita more than 600 miles from her scheduled route. The ship was capsizing and listing heavily, but it was extremely buoyant and would not sink. Despite this, however, the crew of 25 members were completely missing, and they have never been seen again. 4 tons of cargo were missing from the ship, and the ship itself was in quite poor condition. The pipes were corroded, and while the radio worked, the wiring was faulty, so there was only a range of about 3.2 kilometers. Because of how the ship was built, investigators are puzzled as to why the crew didn't remain on the ship, as it wouldn't have sunk, but this has led them to believe that perhaps something happened to the captain, where he was killed or incapacitated, which would have left someone less experienced in charge. To this day, no one is quite sure what happened to those aboard the ship, how it capsized, or where they ended up. It is all very much a mystery. Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have the Mystery House. This is a pretty recent weird discovery that was made in November of last year by the China National Space Administration rover Yutu-2. This rover travels around the far side of the moon, exploring and giving us insights into what lies beyond our point of view. This rover has been traveling through the 186-kilometer wide Von Karman crater, and this is when the rover ended up spotting what appeared to be a sort of cube-shaped unidentified object, which is now being referred to as a mystery house. The rover is now on its way to investigate further, but we don't yet quite have the answers to this mystery. When the mystery house was first spotted, it wasn't exactly far from the rover, as it was only 80 meters away, but that does not mean the rover can get there quickly. The approach for this rover is expected to take somewhere from 2 to 3 lunar days, which is about 2 to 3 months in Earth time. This is because the rover moves quite slowly, and the path to explore this cube object is not a clear one. While we patiently wait for the answers, we can always speculate. Drop a comment down below with your best guesses, and who knows, maybe we'll come up with the next viral conspiracy theory. In our number 9 spot today, we have the green gel, another discovery that was made by the Yutu-2 rover, which first made its lunar landing in February of 2019, came in August of that year. On Lunar Day 8, which began on July 25th, the rover was doing its thing, finding its way through an area that was filled with a bunch of small impact craters. On July 28th, as the team here on Earth was preparing to power down the rover for its little midday nap, which is meant to protect the machine from high temperatures and radiation from the sun, which, if you take away all that scary space stuff, sounds like the cutest little thing ever, a little rover nap. But anyway, as this thing's getting ready for its little rover nap, one member on the team was checking over some images that were taken by the rover's main camera, and that's when they spotted a small crater that seemed like it contained some sort of material that had a color and a sort of luster that was significantly different from the lunar area surrounding it. The team then changed the plans they had for the rover and decided that instead of going west, which was next on the schedule, they instead would take a little detour to go and check out this mystery material. The rover carefully made its way over to the crater and examined it with both its visible and near-infrared spectrometer, which is a thing that detects lights that are scattered or reflected off of material, which helps to reveal what they're made up of. For a while, no one knew exactly what the substance was, and it was only being described as being gel-like and being a weird color. But after almost a year of more research, it was finally identified. It's rock! More specifically, rock that was melted together, most likely in the heat of impact from a meteorite. It's insane that something like that created a dark green glistening impact melt, but it's also very cool. I'm just glad we got down to the bottom of this mystery. In our number 8 spot today, we have orange colored moon. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. This wasn't exactly found on the far side of the moon. I know, I get it, you're upset, but I just truly thought it was so cool. I really wanted to share it with you guys, so bear with me. All the way back in 1972, Apollo 17 astronaut and geologist Harrison Schmitt was exploring around the Taurus Littrow landing site when he stumbled upon some orange-colored soil. It was a completely unexpected find, and one that they weren't quite sure about. What was causing this soil to get its orange color, and why was it different from all the other soil around it? Luckily, especially since it's been so long, they've been able to look more into it, and there are actually some answers to this moon mystery. After more research, lunar geologists were able to conclude that the orange soil happened as a result of an explosive volcanic eruption that occurred over 3.64 billion years ago. That's so cool! This orange soil exists because of molten drops spraying out from an awesome lunar volcanic eruption billions of years ago. Space never fails to absolutely amaze me. I'm starting to think that geologists have the coolest job in the world, by the way. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Tikovsky Crater. This is obviously a crater, and it has been named after the Russian scientist Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. It was originally discovered on photographs that were sent back to Earth from the Russian spacecraft Luna 3. This crater is a large impact crater that lies in the southern hemisphere, but you might be sitting there thinking, there's a lot of craters on the moon, so what makes this one so special? Well, this crater is actually one of the most important figures found on the far side of the moon because it has a complex central peak and a smooth, lava-flooded floor on top of a few other interesting geographical features that make it a very exciting and important place for future lunar exploration. In our number 6 spot today, we have reflections. Like I mentioned before, for a long time it was widely believed that the far side of the moon was referred to as the dark side of the moon because it didn't receive any sunlight, rather than the truth, which is that the name is only to suggest that it's the side we know little about because we can't see it. That is why this discovery was a bit of a shock to some people. Not only is the far side of the moon not dark and does receive sunlight, but the far side of the moon actually reflects more light than our near side. This is because the side that we see has these incredibly dark, smooth, low-lying plains that are from ancient seas of molten magma that were on the moon, and while this is incredibly fascinating, it doesn't really reflect light very well. And while the far side reflects light better, it's still not that great. The moon is significantly darker than it appears to us, with most of the surface being a color closer to that of asphalt. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Sea of Moscow. This is a lunar mare that is one of the very few that sit on the far side of the moon, which is exactly what makes it so fascinating, as well as the fact that we aren't exactly sure of its origins. Just so we're all on the same page, lunar mare is the large, dark basaltic plains that are located on the moon. The basaltic plains are of course made up of basalt, which is a result of the rapid cooling of low viscosity lava that is rich in magnesium and iron that is at the surface or very near to the surface, and this appears both on the Earth and on the moon. For a while it was believed that this was formed due to some ancient volcanic eruption, but there is also speculation that it may have been from a meteorite cluster impact instead. Either way, whichever is responsible for this lunar mare, the moon sure was having a very stressful time. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Crust. Remember how people used to believe that there was a face on the moon? Well, that was thanks to that lunar mare we just talked about. So while the Sea of Moscow and things sort of similar do exist on the far side of the moon, there really isn't a lot of Maria on the side that we can't see. What was called the Lunar Far Side Highlands problem became a thing of human interest in 1959 when that Soviet Luna 3 was able to send the first images of the dark side of the moon all the way back to Earth. On the side of the moon we can see, the near side, we see a lot of variation in coloring, and that is due to this Maria. This knowledge is what led to scientists being shocked when they first saw the other side. The far side, because the far side doesn't look the same as the near side at all. While a lot of the near side is Maria, the far side is mostly mountains and craters, and this led to the question and mystery of why. For 55 years this question plagued researchers, but now we think we may have an answer. Scientists realized that this difference and the reason for the lack of Maria might just be due to the difference in the crustal thickness of the side of the moon we can see and the far side, and this is just the consequence of how the moon originally formed. The most widely accepted answer of how the moon formed is the idea of some sort of Mars-size object slamming into Earth shortly after the planet came into existence, and this gigantic impact flung a bunch of stuff out into space, and this would eventually form our moon. That's like the very basis of the theory. So after this impact, the moon and Earth were both super hot, like so hot that parts of them vaporized, which created a disk of rock, magma, and vapor found around the Earth. Then, since the moon is smaller, it cooled faster, but the moon used to be like 20 times closer to us than it is now, so the far side of the moon cooled faster than the near side, and this created a difference in temperature between the two halves, which then led to impact the crustal formation on the moon. That was a lot of info, but how crazy is that? I always find it so interesting to learn about how each and every step in the formation of our solar system has affected the way things are in ways we don't even really fully realize. In our number 3 spot today, we have craters. Okay, so now we know about why one side has more Maria, but now, why does the far side have more craters than the near side? For a while, people thought this was because the Earth was acting as a sort of shield for the moon, but we now know that that is not true. The Earth only obscures about 4 square degrees out of 41,000 square degrees of the sky that can be seen from the moon, so obviously this means that the Earth is actually a terrible shield for the moon. This is what led researchers to believe that lava flows are more likely responsible, and this definitely goes back to the crust as well and the origins of the moon that we just discussed. The crust of the moon mostly consists of plagioclases, which were formed when aluminum and calcium condensed and combined with silicates in the mantle of the moon. Like we talked about earlier, since the far side was, well, further from the super hot, slower cooling Earth side after that big impact, these elements cooled sooner and the crust that formed was thicker. So when meteor impacts happened on the near side of the moon, there was a more likely chance of them cracking into the thinner crust, which then releases the basaltic lava. But on the far side of the moon, the thicker crust puts up much more of a fight, and now the moon is just left with these cool battle scars. In our number 2 spot today, we have the South Pole Aten Basin. Speaking of craters on the far side of the moon, this one is an immense impact one. Measured to be roughly 2,500 kilometers in diameter and between 5.2 to 8.2 kilometers deep, this is one of the largest known impact craters in our entire solar system. That is no easy feat and definitely means that the moon has seen its fair share of cosmic disturbances. This basin is not only the largest and deepest on the moon, but it is also the oldest. While this is located on the far side of the moon, apparently just the outer rim of the basin can be seen from Earth, and this is due to the huge mountain chain that is called the Leibniz Mountains. Remember those missions launched by the CNSA that we started this list off with? Well, one of their spacecrafts actually landed in this basin in 2019 and began to explore all around it, which means that all it has to offer is soon to be uncovered.
Coming in at number 5, we have plastic. I acknowledge that plastic has helped us get this far. It has been an important part of our development as a species. But just like when a young adult who has to shed their trauma that made them funny, but keep the funny, it's time for us to move on from the thing that is choking our planet. Like if you go outside right now and get a box of tea, the tea will come in a box that is wrapped in plastic. The box is already a container for the tea. Why are we double wrapping it, you know? I know the purpose is to increase the shelf life, but maybe we shouldn't be keeping things on shelves that long. Maybe? I don't know. We should seek out healthier food that doesn't last as long because it doesn't have as many preservatives. Thus it would be stupid to wrap it in plastic. Just wrap it in paper or pour it into my hands. I don't know, just do it. Or have no packaging and everyone just goes to bulk barns and puts it in glass jars and everything like that. I think that's a pretty good idea, but you know, who knows. The plastic, it lasts a little too long. Let's just say that.
In our 4th spot, we have the Brazen Bull. This is one of history's most horrific inventions. The Brazen Bull was a torture device used in ancient Greece around 560 BC. A seaside colony called Ocrigus was ruled over by a man named Phalaris. This device was commissioned for him. He wanted to turn torture into music. His court sculpture created this unique nightmarish piece. It was a hollow sculpture of a bull with bells and whistles attached, and there was enough room for the victim to be placed inside of it. The bull would then be placed over a roaring fire, and instead of screams, it was designed to sound like the grunts of a bull. Now, some say this invention was a myth, but famed poet Cicero states that, in fact, the bull did exist and was used. This remains one of the most evil inventions in history.
Coming in at number 3, we have the Trico system. There are plenty of ways to get rid of hair in places you don't want them to be. There's waxing, shaving, electrolysis, but this one invention deserves to be mentioned just one more time before we let history completely forget it. Never do this again. The Trico system was a hair removal device that became a must-have in every salon in the 1920s, and actually worked. It would remove the hair painlessly and effortlessly. All you had to do was sit at a mahogany desk and face a small window. When the flip was switched, there was no burning, just a slight hum from the machine. But it had some horrendous side effects. Yes, it would remove all the hair, but soon men and women would develop cancerous ulcers, carcinoma, and death. The reason? They were using X-ray technology, which is, as we know, radioactive. It would be administered to the skin for a few minutes and require anywhere between 15 to 20 treatments to be effective. X-ray technology was used for a variety of skin treatments around the time and even in the late 1800s, like for ringworm and eczema. But when the Trico machine was released, however, there was no mention of what the technology they were using was. They were just like, the Trico miracle. You know, just picture like a typical 1920s ad. And the person administering it wasn't well qualified and didn't know what it was either. They just were like, flip switch, and it works. Clients were just marveled that it worked so well until it slowly burned their faces off. Of course, hindsight is 2020. How they were to know. Let's just put this embarrassing, dangerous blunder to the side, shall we?
In our 2nd spot, we have Agent Orange. This next one we're going to talk about should kind of be remembered so that no one ever does anything so awful ever again. Agent Orange was a pesticide that was responsible for 400,000 fatalities, disabilities, and 500,000 birth defects. It was invented by plant biologist Arthur Galston in 1943. He created it as a way to help accelerate the growth of soybeans in places with a short growing season. But in large doses, it actually destroyed crops, and the US decided to take this technology and abuse it. During the War of Vietnam, they sprayed the land, and 4.5 million acres of crops in Vietnam were destroyed by Agent Orange. And any exposure the Vietnamese and US, Australian, and New Zealand soldiers had to this pesticide came with deadly consequences. It caused an abnormal amount of miscarriages, extreme birth defects, cancer, and skin conditions. Some of the land still can't even be used to this day. It's very tragic and scary.
Coming in at number 1, we have the atom bomb. If the name Robert Oppenheimer doesn't ring any bells, maybe this will. Coming in at number 1, we have the atomic bomb. See, there it is. Robert Oppenheimer invented the atomic bomb, and the first one that successfully detonated created a mushroom cloud 40,000 feet high. What people did with this new invention, however, stole an unfathomable amount of lives and opened doors for even more deadly weapons. It also led to one of the most terrifying standoffs in history during the 1960s called the Cuban Missile Crisis. The USA and Soviet Russia were caught in a standoff, both with nukes pointing at each other, waiting for the other to press the big red button. Thankfully, neither did, but many countries have nukes in their arsenal ready to strike whenever they want, and they're also still used in a lot of battles and war today. Considering how much damage was done to Nagasaki and Hiroshima due to the detonations of Fat Man and Little Boy in 1945, oh man, I hope that day never comes, and they just should get rid of them. Like, no country should just have them, because we definitely know that it will lead to the destruction of the world if they're ever used. So we just should make an agreement that get rid, we forget, destroy all the ways of making them, just let's get rid. Albert Einstein was the man who prompted the USA to invent the atom bomb in order to combat the Germans in World War II. He believed the Germans were working on the bomb as well, but he found out too late that that wasn't the case, and they weren't even as far as he thought they were. He immediately regretted his decision, which is why the atomic bomb makes our list of inventions we should all forget. Just get rid of it. He's not the only one who wished it never existed. He's not the only one who wished it never existed. We should just get rid of it. Like, what it...
In our number 1 spot today, we have the Eastern Sea. This is a lunar mare that is located on the western border of the near side and far side of the moon, and is partially visible, but pretty difficult to see from Earth. What is so cool about this one is the way it shows up on lunar images, kind of like a target ring bullseye. It is believed that this is an impact crater that was caused by an asteroid-sized object. Estimated to be around 64 kilometers in diameter, traveling at speeds of around a calm, casual 15 kilometers per second. This collision is said to have caused ripples in the lunar crust, which is what gives it that ring effect. At the moment, we don't have samples directly from this area, so we aren't sure what the exact age is yet, but it is thought to be the moon's most recent or youngest impact basin, thought to be quite a bit younger than the Imbrium Basin, which is about 3.85 billion years old. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the New Jersey UFO. This UFO sighting took place in 2001 just above the New Jersey Turnpike. On July 14th, 2001, just after midnight for around 15 minutes, motorists driving down this highway stopped to stare at the sky to witness what no one could believe. There were strange orange and yellow lights in a V formation just above the Arthur Kill waterway. There were a ton of witnesses who were all extremely confused and shocked as to what they were seeing. Air traffic controllers initially denied that there were any flying objects that could have caused the mysterious lights, but a group that is called the New York Strange Phenomena Investigators claimed that they received radar data that night that would corroborate the story that the witnesses were telling. It may not have been aliens, but it certainly was some sort of unidentified flying object that no one had ever seen before, and there were people from all walks of life witnessing it together. In our number 9 spot today, we have blood rain. Between July 25th and September 23rd of 2001, people in southern India were experiencing one of the most strange weather phenomena I've ever heard of. It is said that after a loud boom in the sky, rain started to fall in the region, but this rain was different from your average run-of-the-mill rain. This rain was blood red, with some reports saying that there was also black, green, and even yellow rain. Does this sound like something out of a science fiction movie? Yes. Is it cause for concern? Thankfully, likely not. There have been similar reports of rainfall like this from around the world, which doesn't necessarily make it feel any less unsettling, but scientists do know 2 reasons for how this happens. The raindrops are getting stained by one of 2 things, either dust from a nearby desert, or a form of microscopic algae that is suspended in the raindrops, causing the color change. You might be wondering where the whole mystery in this one is. Well, that lies in how we have absolutely no idea idea how algae is getting into the clouds and thus into our rain. A theory for this is that perhaps the algae is alien or extraterrestrial and has been hitching a ride on meteors entering our atmosphere, but because the DNA of the algae matches that of a type found in waters all over the world, scientists are skeptical of that idea, so it all remains very much an unsolved scientific mystery. In our number 8 spot today we have the Taos hum. In the small city of Taos, New Mexico, for years, residents and visitors alike have been puzzled by a mysterious sound in the air that no one can quite find the source of. It is said that only about 2% of residents reported hearing this low-frequency desert hum, and the theories as to what could be going on here truly are endless. They range from believing it's caused by some sort of unusual acoustics, all the way to mass hysteria and other far more sinister top-secret theories. Things are further confused by the fact that those who hear the sounds actually hear many different sounds, meaning that it might be more of a subjective experience rather than an objective sound. At this point, it is so unclear we may never truly get any kind of answer that we're looking for. In our number 7 spot today we have Witchcraft. This story is one that is so strange and mysterious and unsettling that I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since the first time I heard it. On December 22nd, 1967, a cabin cruiser called Witchcraft left from Miami with 2 people on board. The 2 men were taking a trip so that they could enjoy the Christmas lights on a 23-foot luxury yacht, truly living the dream. That all changed very quickly, however, when the men were just 1 mile offshore and the Coast Guard received a call from the captain stating that they had struck something. He said that there was no substantial damage, but still, hitting something is usually not great. The Coast Guard set out immediately to help tow the ship back to shore, and it didn't even take 20 minutes for him to arrive, but when he got to the location, he couldn't spot the Witchcraft anywhere. The area that was indicated as the ship's location was completely deserted, and there was no indication that anyone had been there even recently. What is extra strange about this is that not only was the ship apparently virtually unsinkable, but there were also numerous flotation devices and life rafts, as well as emergency equipment like flares and distress signals. No one ever saw any sign of them being used, and the ship was just gone. Officials searched hundreds of square miles in the next few days, but no one has ever found any sign of the Witchcraft. I just don't know how they could be so close, the timing was so short, and they still just completely vanished. It honestly gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. In our number 6 spot today we have ball lightning. This is a mystery that has been around for long before our lifetime, but it still happens today and we just aren't exactly sure what to make of it or how it occurs. Ball lightning is basically like a glowing orb, a mysterious ball of light that glows and crackles and hovers there, and it usually appears during thunderstorms. These glowing balls have been seen by people in their homes, on airplanes, apparently some people have even seen them passing through windows. Ball lightning is absolutely fascinating, but it has scientists stumped. They're the most mysterious weather phenomena on this planet. Ball lightning usually only appears for a few seconds, but here's the thing. It's impossible to predict when and where it'll show up. You don't choose ball lightning chooses you. It's quite rare, but people and scientists alike have experienced it. It has been attempted to be created in labs, but no one can figure out the exact formula that creates it, so I guess you just have to wait and see if you're one of the lucky ones. In our number 5 spot today we have the Summerton Man. The Summerton Man is an unidentified man who was found perished on the Summerton Park beach in South Australia in 1948. Since then, his case, who he is, and what happened to him has been a mystery plaguing authorities and all those who are now invested in the case and its secrets. Public interest in the case arose in part due to how mysterious it was, but also because of the fact that the death occurred in a time of heightened international tension. The mystery surrounding this one span more than just who this man was, however. Firstly, it is unclear how this man passed away. Was it some sort of undetectable poison? How could no one have any idea despite being able to examine the body? The next mystery is that a secret little note was found in his pocket that was torn from a book. The note in his pocket read "To Mom Should," which means is over or is finished. It's a little ominous, but is the note connected to the case or is it just a weird coincidence? We don't know. Earlier this year, the body of the Summerton Man was actually exhumed in order for DNA testing to be done, as we of course have much more technology and DNA databases than we did at the time of his burial. While we haven't had any updates yet, maybe this exhumation means that this one isn't impossible to solve? I guess we'll all just have to wait and see. In our number 4 spot today we have the Catatumbo Lightning. Okay, so basically the opposite of ball lightning, the elusive glowing orbs, we have this kind of lightning that is a around almost too often. Basically, this lightning occurs over the Catatumbo River, and it's a complete atmospheric phenomenon. This lightning occurs 140 to 160 nights a year, 9 hours per day, and from 16 to 40 times per minute. That is absolutely insane. That is so much lightning. That's almost a lightning strike a second. Another thing that's so fascinating about this lightning is that it is colorful and it doesn't produce any thunder. The lightning does change its frequency up from time to time, and at one point it stopped for a few weeks and people thought that maybe it was going to have been exhausted forever, but that changed when the lightning came back, putting it right back on our list of mysteries that we just can't quite figure out. Many people have studied the lightning, trying to figure out exactly how it has been created and what makes this phenomena what it is, but we aren't just quite sure yet. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Zodiac Killer. This one had to make it on this list because although these stories are terrifying and horrible, the story of the uncaught and unidentified serial killer known as the Zodiac truly is one of the most mysterious. The Zodiac Killer took the lives of 5 people in the San Francisco Bay Area between December 1968 and October of 1969. He was most known for targeting young couples or a lone male cab driver. Despite 2 people luckily and thankfully escaping his attempted evil doings, he has still never been caught. He was one of those weird ones who left notes and stuff for the police to find, and there are of course many people who think that the Zodiac has been identified. I'm sure we'll see some of them in the comments, hi. But while no one has heard from the Zodiac since 1974, the case remains active in many different counties, and it is yet to be officially solved. In our number 2 spot today, we have D.B. Cooper. This is a case I have mentioned here before on this channel. In fact, I talked about this guy in my very first video I ever did here, but we had to bring it back because it truly is one of the most baffling mysteries of our lifetime. On November 24th, 1971, a man who said his name was Dan Cooper boarded a flight from Portland to Seattle. Once the plane was in the air, Cooper handed a note to the flight attendant who dropped it into her purse without even opening it. Cooper leaned over and whispered, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb," which is probably number 1 on the list of the top 10 things no flight attendant ever wants to hear. After showing her the bomb, he began to list his demands, which were $200,000, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle to refuel the plane for when they arrived. At 5:39 p.m., the aircraft landed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. After receiving the items he had requested, Cooper ordered all the passengers and some of the flight attendants to leave the plane. The plane then took off again, and when it landed in Reno, Nevada, Cooper wasn't on it. The search for Cooper was one of the most extensive in US history, but he has never been located, and no one knows who he really was or what happened to him after this whole ordeal. Maybe DB knew something we all don't and he vanished into another universe? If so, why did he have to hijack a plane to do so? It truly is one of our biggest mysteries that may never get solved. In our number 1 spot today, we have the USS Princeton UFO. This is a UFO sighting that comes from 2004. On November 14th of that year, the USS Princeton noticed an unknown aircraft of some sort that was about 100 miles off of the coast of San Diego. For 2 weeks prior to this, the crew had been tracking a strange flying object that would start out at around 80,000 feet before extremely quickly dropping to hover right above the Pacific Ocean. Black Aces Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate of Strike Fighter Squadron 41 went over in 2 fighter jets in order to kind of scope out the situation, and when they arrived they saw what at first appeared to be churning water while there was an oval shape just below the surface. After this, a white oval shaped object appeared above the water, but it had no markings on it. Like no windows, nothing though to indicate an engine, no wings, and the infrared monitors on the jets didn't pick up any sort of exhaust. The commander and lieutenant commander tried to intercept this strange aircraft, but it very quickly flew away and it reappeared on the monitor 60 miles away. Like when I say quickly, I mean it was moving at 3 times the speed of sound and over twice the speed of fighter jets. So faster than any kind of technology we currently have. We still don't know exactly what this is, but I'm sure a lot of us are thinking the same thing.
Kicking off the list at number 10, blindfolded gladiators. Remember that last scene in the movie Dodgeball when Vince Vaughn has to blindfold himself and then he still somehow wins? What a moment in time, no dry eyes in the theater at all. Amazing. But what if I told you gladiators would also pull the same trick off? Yeah, in order to get crowds to return to these massive events back in the day, they would need to change the formula from time to time. They would have cheap beer nights at the Coliseum, which helped, but a new idea that worked was referred to as andabata. And that's when gladiators wore blindfolds during combat. How insane does that sound? Are you kidding me? I'd go and watch, probably, I don't know. They would also leave the armor inside. They would mostly battle in just sandals and cloth. Yeah, and you thought Marco Polo made you anxious? Try again. They would save these events for criminals, I guess, but like, come on, stealing bread and then fighting a tiger? The Colosseum was a little unfair, gotta admit. Number 9, Elmer McCurdy. This one is insane, I had to throw it in here. Elmer McCurdy, back in 1911, so a bit more recent than the Colosseum days, he decided to be a rootin' tootin' criminal, and he attempted to rob a train. Unbeknownst to him, that train was not full of gold, but rather it was full of passengers. So he collected a whopping $46 instead. Instead of a gold heist, he got $46, which back in the day was still not bad, I'm not gonna lie. Things were going fine until he was shot by a lawman. Now this is when things start to get really insane. Elmer's body was embalmed and then sold by the Undertaker to this traveling carnival. His body was an exhibit almost, and for the next 60 years, his body was passed around as a prop. It was sold between haunted houses, wax museums, that kind of stuff. Check out this guy who tried to do this and blah blah blah. Such as I'm doing now, but I would have his body here? I don't know, people are weird. Eventually the guy's body, like his real body, don't forget, ended up in California at an amusement park funhouse at Long Beach. Come 1976, there's a crew there filming the movie The $6 Million Man, and that's when Elmer's finger broke off, revealing that it was an actual mummy and not a prop on the set. They went to film The $6 Million Man and ended up finding the $46 man in real life. That is so gross. Imagine that. Some guy with a boom mic's like, Number 8. Fake France. Towards the end of World War I, Paris was tired of seeing, things that they love get blown to smithereens, more than fair. So they figured, let's try and fool the Germans flying overhead. Let's just build a fake Paris. Yeah, a fake Paris. Let's psych them out. They created a decoy, a very large decoy. This life-size stunt double was posted up only a few miles west of the actual city in order to protect it. And it worked. This tiny town called Masons Lafitte, now of course it's looking a lot more full. Now it's like a rich town, not fake buildings, but actual real buildings where rich people live. That's fun. There were 3 different zones set up just in case anything were to drop around the real Paris. Zone A was northeast of the city, had fake train stations and mimicked a suburban region of St. Denis, but it had a big fake Gare du Nord train station. That was the whole pull over there. Zone B, northwest of the city, that was Masons Lafitte, the main fake Paris city I just talked about. And Zone C was the industrial area. So basically it was just east of the city, and they had a massive factory built with literally nothing inside of it. Just a big shell. This sounds a lot like Home Alone, just on a larger scale when you think about it. But with these missions only happening overnight back then, creating a light show with some big props wasn't a bad idea. Lights were carefully spaced out on the ground so it looked like a breathing city from above. Check it out. They Looney Tuned the Germans, and it worked. How amazing is that? Number 7, Mad Jack. During World War II, you needed all the power you could get, but one man won, Lieutenant Colonel Jack Churchill, aka Mad Jack, great nickname. He had a different mindset when it came to battle and weaponry. He believed that any British soldier going into battle without a sword was improperly dressed. Also, fun fact about Mad Jack here, he represented Great Britain in the World Archery Championships. So not only did he have a sword, but he also went into battle with a longbow. Yeah, like an Avenger. History has acknowledged Mad Jack as the last man to officially taken out an enemy in combat by using a longbow, which is pretty cool. But here's the most intimidating part about him. Before combat, Mad Jack would play the bagpipes, right before drawing his sword and then running at you in battle. Can you imagine? That's some Game of Thrones stuff. A dude ripping the bagpipes, dropping it, and then sprinting at you full on with a sword and a longbow? Good game. I would just fold. I'd throw my on the ground. I'd be like, nope, you win. Take it. Take all the land. Number 6, Ball the Burning Men. If you're gonna party like it's 1999, at least do so safely, Back in 1393 in Paris, these knights would put on these fun party performances for the king. They would dress up and pretend that they were wild beasts. They would soak their armor with shrubbery and dry grass and hay. They would stuff it, anything to make them look like, I don't know, a hairy beast almost. Which first of all, great bit. Pretty itchy, honestly, great commitment. The party was going well and they planned for these wacky performances, so they had to ban candles and torches from this room. The king's brother, he was drunk, maybe he was, at a festival of drunkenness prior, I don't know. He walked in with a torch and all hell broke loose. He got too close to one of these knights, one of these stuffed knights, and well, he caught on fire and yeah, you could probably figure out the rest. It was Bad news. Number 5, coffee ban. This is the worst of the worst right here, halfway, let's do it. Murad IV, Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. This guy banned coffee. Yeah, what an absolute monster. He was born in 1612, and for the most part, his mother was ruling through him because, you know, he was so young and all. But when he got a little older, he put forth these laws just because he could, and he made these laws punishable by death, so he wasn't playing around. Yeah, this guy banned coffee, tobacco, and alcohol. What a party pooper. He would take this so seriously as well, he would actually disguise himself as a civilian at nighttime and then wander around the streets aimlessly in hopes that he would catch one of these dark roast renegades. If you were caught outside having a quick smoke break, you weren't arrested, you weren't charged or anything like that, but rather Murad IV himself would just take off your head right there in the streets. No trial, no jury, just straight to execution. How horrible is that? No coffee? Could you imagine getting your head because you had a coffee? Get out of here. Number 4, royal curse. The remains of Polish queens and kings were discovered back in April 1931 in a crypt in Vilnius. Polish researchers didn't even know what they were in for. A storm had flooded a cathedral in Vilnius and they threw down sandbags to preserve the area. God forbid it flooded, obviously. But on the night of April 25th, they had followed the water into this lost chamber that held the remains of Polish kings and queens. No one has found them at any point before. These remains were still buried with the crown. It was like a whole scene untouched. It was from the 15th century. What a find, right? Sadly, the flood ended up ruining all of these remains, and this is when things start to get a little mysterious. All those involved in these findings began to die in unusual circumstances afterwards. One professor had died after falling down a lift shaft in his apartment. Another guy died before him as well due to undisclosed medical issues, but apparently it was sketchy or not supposed to happen. Another professor, years later, who worked in the crypt as well, became paralyzed randomly at 62. A sculptor, also involved, died when untying his shoelace, so a freak accident. And another professor died in 1936 shortly after visiting the crypt again. I hope this isn't an ancient curse because these guys were legitimately trying to preserve history and avoid the crypt flooding. We need a Ouija board to clear this whole situation up. We need one guy to be like, hey, by the way, just explain everything. Number 3, the Festival of Drunkenness. Wait, is this an actual thing? Hold on. Nowadays we have parties for just about everything. There's a baby on the way, let's party. Baby just came out, let's party. Baby turned 1, now we gotta party at like 11 a.m. We just love celebrating, we'll find excuses to celebrate. Well, the Festival of Drunkenness in Egypt back in the 15th century well, they got right to the point. Just drink your faces off. That's it. This religious event, and yeah, you heard me, religious event, was to celebrate the Egyptian sun god Ra. And the story goes as such. Ra stopped the end of the world, way back in the day, when Hathor was planning on devouring all of life. So Ra successfully thwarted their plan by getting them drunk off 7,000 jars of beer. That's a lot of IPAs, oh my. The beer was dyed red to look like blood. Hashtag pranked ya. So now the god was so drunk that it couldn't, devour everybody. So ancient Egyptians would honor this, again, religious event by getting absolutely plastered. If you didn't pass out, that was considered offensive, like not burping after a meal. Also, drink responsibly. Number 2, Caesar and Caligula. Running the clock back to 12 CE, Gaius Caesar, aka Caligula, aka the Roman emperor at the time, apparently he was close with his horse. I had 2 dogs growing up, I would ride or die for those little piggies, okay? I get it, I'm an animal lover myself. And if I had the money, yeah, I would probably make them a house, just for them just to run around with and all that jazz. Well, he gave his horse a marble stall, and it got to the point where they were so close, Caligula was about to appoint the horse to high office of council, but he was taken out. Imagine if he had lived and this happened. What would those meetings look like? What would they smell like, rather? I don't want to know. Let's move on. And finally, coming in number 1, Adrian Carton de Wyatt. Over the course of 6 decades and 4 wars, Lieutenant General Adrian Carton de Wyatt survived the impossible multiple times. He's considered one of the most dedicated soldiers of all time because, well, for starters, after he lost his left hand and his left eye, Adrian did not retire. In fact, the British Army officer went on to experience 10 more horrible injuries. As World War I broke out in November 1914, Carton was serving and he was opposing the forces of the Dervish state. In doing so, he was shot in the arm and face, that's how he lost his left eye, but a grim detail shared by Lord Ismay, who served alongside the soldier, said in 1964 that the doctor at the time couldn't do anything, not a single thing, about his eye. So he must have been in pure agony the entire time. Literally, it must have been just the worst pain. Lord Ismay continues to believe that losing his eye was actually a blessing in disguise, because the incident allowed for Adrian to relocate to Europe, where even more action was waiting for him. Once stationed in Europe, Adrian received wounds to the head, hand, stomach, groin, leg, ankle, all by bullets, all a bad time. And if that's not inspiring enough, he survived numerous plane crashes and a broken back afterwards. If you feel like reading more incredible details about the soldier and the diplomat, there's a book on his whole life. And yeah, it's more interesting than I just made it sound.
Starting off his countdown, we have the gas-resistant stroller. When you go out for a walk with the little guys right now, you might throw them in a stroller. It's probably the easiest way to get from A to B without having to wait for the little kids to catch up. They always want to stop and pick up a rock that's smooth. Like, what is it with smooth rocks that seem so cool? Anyways, back in the day when there was a concern about chemical attacks, a gas-resistant stroller was made. The gas-resistant stroller was what looks like a metal coffin on wheels. It was all the rage when mustard gas wasn't yet a war crime. It would pair nicely with a gas mask that your mom could wear as she pushed you through the streets. Honestly, it's pretty terrifying, not gonna lie. I'm glad that this isn't a thing anymore. Over to you, Rachel.
Coming in at number 9, the Fliz. You know that one of the safest parts about riding a bike is the fact that you can get into any sort of accident and you're not attached to it. You can kind of just fly off and jump off before you land in a mud puddle or scrape your knee or whatever. Another great part of a bike is that it has pedals and gears so you can move much faster than if you were running or walking, which is kind of the idea. Even if you're out of shape and you haven't done a lot of cardio, like the people who get up at 4 a.m. and go for runs, oh my god, those people are like on another tier, they're like gods. Then you can definitely go really fast on a bike if you want to. And what on earth is a Fliz? This thing is what happens when you mix a jolly jumper with a bike and are willing to look embarrassing for everyone to see. The Fliz is a bike with no pedals, so you have to push with your feet like a Flintstone. And now this obviously sucks because you wouldn't really be able to move very fast at all. They also built a harness into it so you can hang in there like you're some sort of baby Bjorn. Usually when you invent a new thing, the goal is to try and make it better than the last version of said thing instead of making it worse or really stupid. So I don't think the guy who strolls in on the Fliz is going to have a swarm of men or women around them being like, oh my god, marry me, I love you, because they look so sexy. They'll probably be looking at him being like, what? Is he okay? And how do you go uphill with this thing? You have to just run up the hill as you're attached to a bike? What is the point of being in the bike then?
In our 8th spot, we have bat bombs. Yeah, not bath bombs, bat bombs. This next one is not only terrifying, but also deadly. When it comes to warfare, people can get pretty inventive. Imagine you're stalking past enemy lines in the dead of night, when all of a sudden, a web-winged furry creature swoops in and drops a bomb right at your feet. Bat bombs were an experimental weapon developed in World War II, and they are exactly as they sound. It was a bat with a bomb attached to it. This would detonate on or near enemies. The plan was developed and submitted by Lytle S. Adams, a dentist from Irwin, Pennsylvania. He presented his idea to the White House just 2 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor, and they liked it and the project was greenlit. The doc assembled an oddball team, including a pilot turned actor, an ex-gangster, and an ex-hotel manager. The project was disbanded in 1943 because it was surpassed by a deadlier project. Stay tuned for that one later on in the list.
Coming in at number 7, we have the Urban Baby Window Cage. I can definitely see how this is appealing. Like, you want to make sure your baby gets a lot of fresh air, but you don't have time to take them for a walk when they're young. The Urban Window Baby Cage was basically a chain link cage with a pillow inside of it, so you could just plop your baby inside and go, look, a bird, Jimmy. Apparently everyone back then would have been totally fine with Michael Jackson dangling his baby outside his window because that's what they all did, apparently. The purpose of this contraption was so that your baby could get a little fresh air, because you don't want your baby to get all stuffy in your New York apartment that's the size of a shoebox. And this was in a time when elevators were both scarce and the chance of them killing you was much higher. Think Tower of Terror, but real life. So walking that potentially very chubby baby up and down 30 flights of stairs doesn't seem very fun as just hanging him outside a window so you can feel the sun in his face and hear all the slurs that New York construction workers offer to the patrons on the sidewalks. If your kid ever gets out of line, you can just throw them in the cage for a timeout. You know? That's, this is why we should forget this. It's not a good idea, guys. Let's just stick with like jolly jumpers and cribs that are inside. That sounds like a better idea.
In our 6th spot, we have the hydrogen blimps.
Hydrogen blimps are labeled as one of the worst inventions of all time. Basically, it was like a big balloon in the sky. It would be pushed by propellers, and guess what they would put into the balloon to make it float? Hydrogen. Hydrogen was cheaper and more readily available, so they used it. Just there's one tiny issue with that. It was highly flammable. But they would pile people into this blimp that was fueled by hydrogen. And sadly, they would explode. In 1937, the Hindenburg, a German airship, caught fire and crashed in 36 seconds. It was very sad and very disastrous. But that wasn't even the first time that one exploded. Just after the Hindenburg, that's when people were like, "Okay, maybe this isn't safe." Now, history should never be forgotten, but maybe let's just never bring back hydrogen blimps, okay?
Obviously, it wasn't always a comfortable procedure since the makeup artist could accidentally press the model's head with these strips too tightly. After using the micrometer, a lot of models would often be left with painful headaches.
You're gonna be so grateful that the inventions on today's list are no longer around today. Believe me. From an invention known as the head crusher to another invention that allows you to smoke 20 cigarettes at once. Let's talk about these and more only in today's video. Top 10 scary inventions in history that should be forgotten, part 3. But before we begin, I have some peachy news, pun intended. I have started my very own reaction channel called Peach. You all totally need to check it out because it's gonna be so much fun. And you'll see a side of me that you've never seen before. So check the link in the bio to subscribe to Peach. Starting off this countdown, we have the Iron Chair. Imagine the Iron Maiden, but in chair form. Basically, this was a torture device used in the Middle Ages. Victims were placed onto a chair that was filled with hundreds of sharp spikes. There could be anywhere from 500 to 1,500 spikes. They were strapped into the chair, and when their restraints were tightened, the spikes would dig into their flesh. And they often left the victims there for hours, even sometimes days, just suffering. Sometimes there was a hole on the seat and then a fire was lit below them. But the most common way this chair was used for was actually psychological torture. The victim was often strapped in and then would have to watch another person die in front of them. It was either you confess to your crimes, or you die from the chair, or die another painful death like the person you saw die. This device was used until the late 1800s in Europe. And at number 9, we have the chain smoker, and I'm not talking about the band here. But if you guys are liking this video so far, make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps me out. This invention was created for those who wanted to smoke not 1, not 2, but 20 cigarettes at one time. That is lung cancer just waiting to happen. But it was pretty popular in the mid-20th century. So this invention was bad for a number of reasons. Number 1, cigarettes can kill. Imagine smoking 20 at once. Think about what that would do to your teeth, gums, skin, and lungs. Also, think about how expensive it would be to fuel that addiction. In our 8th spot, we have the breaking wheel. The breaking wheel was an ancient device used to torture and/or kill prisoners. Typically, it was used during public executions. Basically, how this device works is it's a giant wheel with spokes. The person was then strapped to the wheel and then beat, or the wheel was slammed down on them. The most common thing would be having them lay on the wheel, and then the executioner would hit them. Their body was woven between the spokes of the wheel so that when they were hit, their limbs would give away and break. It's really gruesome. Either they were hit until death, or they were just left there after being badly injured to die a slow, painful death. Moving on to number 7, we have the beauty micrometer. This device was basically a way to make you feel really crappy about your appearance. So it was designed in the 1930s and was used as a beauty calibrator to see how beautiful you were and what areas needed more work. And those areas that needed work were where the makeup was applied. The machine itself looked like a medieval torture device with like screws and these weird strips attached to it. The machine itself was made by beautician Max Factor Sr. Yes, a man telling women how to look. Anyways, this machine is terrifying, and its users would often have terrible headaches after wearing this device. Coming in at number 6, we have the mass shaving machine. And this invention is exactly what it sounds like. This was popular back in the 19th century. It allowed barbers to shave 12 men at the exact same time. This device would first coat everyone's face with shaving cream or whatever they used back then, and then there was a blade hooked onto it, and it would go and shave the men's face. No. Just no. Everyone has different face shapes. That blade could come down and slice your face or something. I'm just glad it isn't around today. I know everyone wants efficiency, but this invention could go wrong for a number of reasons. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the flatulence filtering underwear. This one has got to be the weirdest one on this list. Basically, if you're a person that has really bad gas, don't worry. This underwear has got you covered. Basically, if you toot, the underwear somehow filters it so no odor comes out. No, I'm sorry, that's just weird as heck. Please, let's not make this a thing. Next thing you know, a company is gonna come out with like underwear that makes your farts smell like things like strawberries or marshmallows. I don't need this becoming a trend, okay? Like, ooh, who has the best farts? No. Moving on to number 4, we have the creeping baby. If dolls creep you out, then you would not be a fan of this invention at all. In 1871, a man named George P. Clark invented this doll baby thing. His goal was to make a doll that crawls exactly how a baby does. But boy, did it turn out really creepy. So the doll's head, arms, and legs were made out of painted plaster. From there, they were hinged onto a brass clockwork body. The doll then moves forward by rolling along on 2 toothed wheels. But honestly, it just looks like a creepy robot baby. So not only is this doll terrifying looking, but it can slowly creep along. Yeah, no, just no. Let's just leave it in the past. No, thank you. In our 3rd spot, we have the revolver camera. Again, it's just as it sounds. Basically, it was a gun that would take a picture when you pull the trigger. Yeah, you heard me correctly. It was meant to take a photo exactly when the bullet hit the target. Okay, but don't worry, there were no bullets in the camera when they took the photos. Basically, in around 1938, this device was created. A tiny camera was attached to the underside of the barrel and the front of the trigger guard. It was attached so that every time the trigger was pulled, it would snap a photo. Now, there's no evidence that this gun was actually used. They only used it for trial photo shoots. And like I said, it was used without bullets. Or so that's what historians assume. Sadly, we don't know much about this invention and its purpose. Was someone trying to make something cool?
Coming in at number 10, we have Spring-Heeled Jack. Who, I say who, was Spring-Heeled Jack? The name Spring-Heeled Jack popped up in British news publications in 1837 amid a spate of weird attacks around Clapham Common in London. One Mary Stevens was walking to Lavender Hill through the park when a figure leapt out at her. Rather oddly, the chap, or beast, kinda kissed her and ripped off her clothes with his claws, which is pretty awkward, and claws, I say it again. I really would not like to be set upon, and neither did Mary. She claimed that his kiss was cold and clammy. She screamed on attack, and rightly so, which spooked the man or creature. He kind of sprang away. The next day, a man fitting the attacker's description was seen jumping in front of a carriage, causing a crash. He then reportedly escaped by jumping over a 9-foot wall whilst laughing manically. This odd behaviour earned him the nickname Spring-Heeled Jack, who is also called the Terror of London in the media. Not a real person, I hear you cry? You are wrong! The light-footed devil was actually officially recognised by the Lord Mayor of London on the 9th of January 1838. Following that, further sightings did crop up in newspapers, including a much publicised attack on 2 women in February 1838. One described the figure as vomiting blue and white flames, while his eyes resembled red balls of fire. My favourite is this 1867 illustration of the devil. He seems to have moved from London up to the northwest of England, and he was last spotted in Liverpool in 1904. So, who or what was Spring-Heeled Jack? Coming in at number 9, we have the Green Children of St Martin's Lane. If you visit the village of Woolpit in Suffolk, England, really not too far from where my parents live, locals will tell you about a mystery that befell the historic place in the 12th century. 2 children turned up out of seemingly nowhere. They spoke a different language and their skin was an off shade of greenish. The pair were taken in by kindly village folk who tried to care for them, only to find that they would only eat raw broad beams. Eventually the children's green skin began to fade into a normal colour and they were baptised by villagers. Sadly, the boy died, but the girl adjusted to her new life, learning English. When she was actually able to speak, she explained that her and her brother had come from a place called St. Martin's Land, a world underground inhabited by green people. She said her and her brother were feeding their father's flock when they heard a loud sound and were somehow transported into an above ground field. Speaking of the whole life underground thing, this is how the girl was reported to have explained it. "The sun does not rise upon our countrymen. Our land is little cheered by its beams. We are contented with that twilight which among you precedes the sunrise or follows sunset. Moreover, a certain luminous country is seen not far distant from ours, and divided by it by a very considerable river. Is this a hint at a parallel universe, or do you think the children were faking it? If so, why were they green? Why did they stay green for so long? And, where did they come from?" Ooh, this is such a mystery. Coming into number 8, we have Alyssa Lamb. This is actually quite a recent story, which makes it even scarier. Alyssa Lamb is a true enigma. In 2013, the Canadian student went missing after a stay at the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. The hotel itself has seen many dramas over the years, but this one has video evidence and it's really bizarre. The video was posted of her from an elevator security camera by police, and this was the last time she was seen alive. In the video, she's acting exceptionally strangely, very erratically. From the footage, it clearly looks like Alyssa is talking to someone who just wasn't there. She presses a number of buttons in the elevator, then the doors fail to close. She is seen peering out of the elevator and then trying to hide in the corner. She then exits the elevator and seems to be pleading with someone invisible outside of the door. Now the footage does end with her walking out of shot and the lift door opening and closing a number of times, which seems to be a bizarre mechanical fault. Alyssa was travelling on her own, and at first she was in a shared room but was moved because her behaviour appeared to be very odd. Now Alyssa was known to have bipolar and depression. She went missing at the end of January and her body was found on the 19th of February. Now the grisly discovery was made by hotel maintenance workers who had come to investigate issues with the water pressure system. It seems that she was dead in the water tank. She was naked and her clothes and possessions were found floating next to her. It isn't possible for her to have climbed in on her own. It seems that her death shares some very disturbing similarities with the 2005 movie Dark Water. So what happened to Alyssa Lamb, and who was she talking to outside the elevator? We just don't know. Coming into number 7, we have the Count of Saint Germain. The Count of Saint Germain was a European adventurer who was dubbed the Wonder Man by Voltaire. The French national was a member of high society, and he was hailed as a great philosopher. The only thing is that nobody actually knew his origins, where he came from or what his upbringing was like. In order to deflect questions about his upbringing, he'd say crazy things like he was 500 years old. He was wealthy and highly educated, and at times claimed to be the son of a prince, although these were unfounded. It seems that at one point he may have been arrested in London on suspicion of espionage but was released. Lady Jemima York once wrote a letter referring to him. She said, "He is an odd creature, and the more I see him, the more curious I am to know something about him." He died in what historians think were his late 80s, which is actually really old for the time that he was alive. Nobody was any of the wiser as to who he actually was, which is, again, super strange. Coming into number 6, we have the Poe toaster. Who are they? Edgar Allan Poe died in 1849, and just when we thought that the raven had quaffed its last, 100 years after the American poet's death, a mysterious figure started appearing at the graveside of Poe's final resting place on the anniversary of his birthday. So that's January the 19th for all those who want to pop along to Baltimore and try and solve this mystery. The graveside figure is always clad in a black cloak and wielding a silver-tipped cane. Ostentatious. I love it. The visitor brings with them 3 red roses and half a bottle of cognac. They raise a toast to the poet, drink it up, and then leave the whiskey and flowers graveside. While people go along and try and spot the mystery toaster, nobody has ever tried to uncloak or disturb the figure, which actually I'm really glad for. Some things I think should remain a mystery. Coming into number 5, we have Madame Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. What a mouthful! Did Madame Helena have real spiritual truth and paranormal powers, or was she a charlatan? Either way, I think I like her. Her narrative is debated today. She features in Lionel and Patricia Fanthorpe's book The World's Most Mysterious People, and it's easy to see why. Helena was born in 1831 to a wealthy Russian family, and from childhood possessed unusual psychic powers. She ran away from her husband and escaped Russia aged 18 and went on a madcap adventure through the Americas, India, and the Oriental East. Some critics claim that this never happened and that she made it all up, but whatever happened, she did return to Europe spiritually enlightened. She met a man, Mahatma Maurya, that she claimed she had seen in her psycho-spiritual dreams since she was small. The woman created her own religion called Theosophy, and she changed her name to HPB, and actually many people worshipped her as a guru, while some were vehemently opposed to her. She spoke Russian, Georgian, English, French, Italian, Arabic, and Sanskrit. Let's also remember that this was the 1800s, a horrible time for sassy, bold women, but she was doing her thing. The mystery surrounding her probably comes from a society who simply could not believe that she was such a formidable force. Coming into number 4, we have Berenger Saunier. Berenger Saunier was born in 1852 and died in 1917, aged 64. His life and death sparked much intrigue at the time and beyond, ever since he moved to the French village of Rennes-le-Château. Stories about the village and the priest consist of many theories, some of which involve the mysterious Knights Templar, the Merovingians, the Cathars, the Holy Grail, Mary Magdalene, and the remains of Jesus Christ. Oddly, the priest handled a lot of money. Documents from the 1890s suggest that he spent around 660,000 francs when he only had a salary of 90 francs a year. Some say that he found treasure buried under the land of Rennes-le-Château. Others say that he found evidence that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were married and produced offspring that eventually became the Merovingian dynasty. Some think he was being bribed by a higher force. We know that the priest was fired, effectively in 1909, but he refused to leave the village of Rennes-le-Château. For some reason, something, or perhaps someone, was keeping him there. His story has inspired many mystery and crime novels, including the Da Vinci Code. Coming into number 3, we have Caspar Hauser. Caspar Hauser seemed to appear from nowhere on the streets of Nuremberg in Germany. He carried a letter with him that was addressed to a local military man. The letter claimed that he was the son of a dead cavalryman and was to be taken in. He was taken to a police station and he wrote his name down as Caspar. He claimed that actually he was raised in a dark dungeon and that the first human that he'd ever met was a mysterious man who visited him not long before his release. He always hid his face, and Caspar said it was he who taught him to read and write. Some people thought that perhaps Caspar was an illegitimate member of the Baden royalty. The mystery continued. Often Caspar would appear wounded, and he would say that a mystery cloaked figure had come to cut him. In 1830, 3 years before his death, he was involved in a pistol accident. Again, it was all very suspicious. In 1833, he claims he was lured into a courtyard and stabbed in the stomach by a stranger who claimed to have been watching him. Eventually, Caspar did die of his wounds. His grave can be found in Ansbach, where his headstone reads in Latin, "Here lies Caspar Hauser, enigma of his time, mysterious as death." So what was going on? Was he making it all up? Was he actually an illegitimate member of the royal family? Again, we don't know. Coming into number 2, we have Marie Laveau. Marie Laveau is one of the most famous mystical women in history and often referred to as the Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. I kind of like that name. She was born a free Creole woman in Louisiana in 1801. Details of her life are pretty sketchy, but she managed to charm those who encountered her. Legend has it that Marie was beautiful, wise, and witchy. She practiced magic medicine and was able to heal people. It is also said that she was indeed a voodoo priestess and was able to read and control people's minds. She could summon spirits and raise the dead. It seems that she held a ceremony in her 70s that was attended by 12,000 people. They were oddly drawn to her. She died age 80 and people still visit her grave today, leaving offerings in exchange for requests and wishes. Finally, coming into the number 1 spot, we have Rasputin. Rah rah Rasputin, lover of the Russian queen. Honestly, I think that song is an absolute banger and it makes me dance all the time. And so too was the mysterious Rasputin a banger, if you know what I mean. Rasputin was a renegade monk, a mystic healer, a sexual deviant, and a political uprooter. He's also the man who would not die. Rasputin allegedly stopped the bleeding of the hemophiliac prince, son of Tsar Nicholas, and was rumored to be a lover to the wife, the Tsarina, hence the song. 2.5 years before his death in December 1916, Rasputin survived a murder attempt by a beggar woman. He was stabbed in the gut and lost a lot of blood, but miraculously, he survived a wound that would usually kill. Then, on that fateful day in December, he proved very hard to off indeed. It is said that he ate a meal heavily laced with poison, but he lived. Then the men conspiring to kill him decided to shoot him with a barrage of bullets, but he still wouldn't die. They tossed his body into an ice-cold river to drown, and I probably don't need to tell anyone how cold Russia is in December, right? Some further reports suggest that he was rescued from a river by passers-by, and that he still drew shaky breath. Some say his penis was cut off and obtained, smuggled, and now reportedly rests in a jar in the Museum of Erotica in St. Petersburg. Also, it's said to be a foot long.